Ladies and gentlemen, I bring apologies from Nick Gibb, who is really on the phone, because he is prevented by some school visits and inevitably some political problems today from being with us. I know you're sorry he is not with us. Not half as sorry as I am, because I was hoping to skulk at the back with a glass of wine, but here I am singing before I get that glass of wine. I am really delighted to be present at the launch of this website, and also to praise enormously this particular effort. I was brought up sharply to this when I was Director General of St John Ambulance in the 80s. And every year we ran an event which culminated in the presentation of an engraved, rather lovely silver tray and a small sum of money left by a kindly person to the young person in this country who had performed a meritorious act of first aid. And we scouted schools and the rest of it in order to find that person. And indeed, one year before me came an extraordinarily wonderful example of a girl who'd saved the life of her aunt. Now, I gave it to one of our doctors to take a look at, and he said to me, you know, there's something a bit wrong with this. And when, of course, he telephoned the ambulance service and the local doctor, he became aware that the head teacher's encomium about this girl had the most serious flaws. And to cut a long story short, her story was, in actual fact, a lot of nonsense. When, and this is perhaps the most serious thing for me, when we approached the head about it to say, well, why did you accept everything that she said on face value? He said, well, it did sound a bit fishy to me, but she comes from quite a poor home, and I thought to myself, well, she could do with the money. And what an appalling thing that was. And it struck me then, as it strikes me now, that with the secularization of society, we are more and more needing in our schools this kind of initiative. Now, I was privileged last year to visit a well-known Roman Catholic school, a well-known Church of England school, and a well-known Jewish school, in fact, the Hesmonian, whose head is here today. It struck me very forcibly that an incident like the one that I've described could not possibly have emanated from one of those schools, because the values that underpin the schools and the values that underpin the community surrounding them would have made it very, very much more difficult. It's hugely sad, is it not, that in our schools as a whole we are seeing more and more difficulties of this kind. And of course, as your chairman has pointed out, when these things happen and are taken into working life, there you get problems. And of course, I've been astonished, to be quite honest with you, by the children in my 20s, in their 20s, of some of my friends, whose working values I would describe as somewhat dodgy. Whereas I know that their family values and the values that they use among their friends are absolutely what I would approve of. So it is hugely, hugely important to be able to introduce children to these values at an early age. I agree with you entirely. At an early age, in order to be sure that they get an opportunity to view them. And the scenarios that that you use and our website describes, I think are fantastic. Didn't you hate that woman in the power suit? You could see that the guy, because he had an open shirt and was slightly hesitant, you could see that he was right. But we all knew, but it was very, very appropriate for young people to be able to look at the moral dilemma there and and to see what they would do, because actually the film, quite rightly, gave no answers. The answers are to be found and discussed in the classroom. And that's why this, as I say, is a hugely important initiative. It is very much in accordance, and I, as a very new and inadequate amateur politician, am not capable of speaking on behalf of the coalition government. It is very much in line with the current policies of the government. You see, what we're doing is trying to give as much autonomy to schools as we possibly can. We started this in the 1990s. It was continued a little by the previous government, and now we hope that under Michael Gove it's blossoming. And it will lead, in the end, as you know, to a disappearance of a nationalised curriculum, something I have to say that I always thought was wrong, as I think that the last government's insistence on, it was a Conservative government, as you know, introduced the national curriculum. I believe that was mistaken. I believe it was mistaken also to introduce the nationalisation of the methodology of teaching. Our hope is that we will be leaving this to the professional people within the schools. Now, of course, that's a two-edged sword. We have to learn, and the government has to learn, to trust the teachers to do these things. Where those teachers are like some of my friends here in the room, I would have not the slightest difficulty about doing it. But, of course, teachers do need help. They do need precisely this kind of initiative because the national curriculum will gently go away. Government will not be saying, you must have money and morals on your curriculum. What a mistake that would be, because it would become a tick-the-box exercise. Oh God, we've got money and morals this afternoon. And that is not what we want. This is exciting, and it is extremely valuable, and it is something which should be within the toolbox of all teachers, as it is, of course, cross-curricular as well. So I very much hope that from the huge number of schools that are involved already, we shall see even more following the launch of the website today, and that basically we shall get to the point where more and more schools are looking at these values, that they come to underpin our society, dare I say it, once again, so that when young people go out into the world of commerce and business, we shall see that improvement, which I know Lord Wolf mentioned at the beginning, for which we all hope. And dare I say it, in these hallowed walls of the Palace of Westminster, had some of our politicians attended this course when they were at school, then we may not have had some of the problems that we have seen during the past few years here. If I may be permitted to finish with a story of a different, of perhaps almost the same moral dilemma. Queen Victoria was notorious for her personal parsimony towards her family, and her grandson, I believe it was Prince Arthur of Connaught, was sent off to school at Eton, which is just across the bridge from Westminster, and I know that you've been giving money and models there. But this was a century and a half before you got there. And her grandson, when he started, was given by her pocket money of 10 shillings to last the whole term. He found that there were a vast number of very rich boys there, and although he was the Queen's grandson, his 10 shillings didn't last terribly long. So he wrote her a letter and he said, "Dear Grandmama, please send me another 10 shillings." And she wrote back and she said, "The German Empress is visiting, my dog Fritzy is very well at the moment. You mustn't write to ask me for money. Here is 5 shillings." Very soon afterwards he wrote once again and said, "Please, can I have another 5 shillings? I've run out of money." And she wrote back and said, "The Tsar of Russia is likely to be coming. My dog is not terribly well, but here is 2 shillings and 6 pence." He wrote again in the same vein and received 1 shilling, and then finally he wrote to say, please do send me another few shillings, Grandmama. And she wrote to say, you are an incorrigibly careless boy, and I'm not sending you another penny. And anyway, I'm off to Osborne in the Isle of Wight. It was just a few days afterwards, the Palace Aide was walking in Eton, saw on the newsagent's wall my very last royal letter for sale, 10 shillings. Now, whether that was commercial acumen or dodgy behaviour, I leave you to decide. But finally, once again on behalf of Nick, and indeed, very, very sincerely from myself, I wish this initiative every possible success, and may it spread out amongst the schools of this country to do the good that we were made to do. Thank you so much.